The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Mr. President, how could the administration discuss the possibility of reopening the country when the administration does not have an adequate nationwide testing system for this virus? Don't you need a nationwide testing system for the virus before you reopen?
We have a great testing system. We have the best, right now, the best testing system in the world. But there are certain sections. There are certain sections in the country that are in phenomenal shape already. Other sections are coming online. Other sections are going down. And we, in addition to that, are giving out millions of tests. And every day we're doing it exponentially. We're picking up. And what we'll be doing in the very near future is going to certain areas of our country and do massive testing. It's not necessary, but it would be a good thing to have.
Don't you need that, though, Mr. President, to make sure people are safe going back to work? You don't want to send people back to the workplace.
We want to have it, and we're going to see if we have it. Do you need it? No. Is it a nice thing to do? Yes. We're talking about 325 million people, and that's not going to happen, as you can imagine. And no, it would never happen with anyone else either. Other countries do it, but they do it in a limited form. We'll probably be the leader of the pack.
I know nothing.
Exactly. He knows nothing. Hello, everybody. It's Good Friday. It's okay. I skipped Passover. I just did. And so now it's Good Friday, and Sunday, New York should reach the peak of death. Wow. It's just, wow. So the zombie apocalypse, anybody? The zombie apocalypse? I don't know. I will tell you, he is briefing right now, and I do not want to listen to it, and I don't think you do either. So I'm not going to play it because I wouldn't get past 2 sentences before my fever peaked, okay? Before I literally lost my mind listening to his lying. It's just one of these crazy damn deals where he stands up and he talks about how he wants to open the economy, and then Fauci gets up and says, this is not the time to be pulling back at all. So what is the use of these rallies that he has every day? Now, he's sitting there saying, we've got the best testing in the world, and and it's just not true. It's not true because we blew it. We blew it, and now there are documents to prove that the CDC failed miserably. The CDC had a plan that was spelled out in August of 2018. Yes, he was the president. It was his administration. And it had the Center for Disease Control and 3 of the biggest associations in lab testing that had called for boosting the capacity of public health clinics, bringing big commercial labs into a testing process at the first sign of a pandemic, and making sure that labs would have whatever they needed in order to mount a large-scale response to any flu-like or any pandemic, any virus, anything at all. The CDC decided that it didn't like, actually, Donald Trump decided that he didn't want the CDC to do this. He didn't want that to happen because the numbers would look bad for him. And he was very busy lying about the transmission, the contagiousness, the disease itself, which he didn't understand at all because he was disinterested in it. And he was very busy lying about it and downplaying it and dismissing it as one guy from China, 15 people, all on their way to getting well. Nobody was going to die, right? And ordered the CDC to be the only place where testing would occur. That didn't happen until early February. Although, remember, oh, that's me. Sorry, wait. So that didn't happen until early February. And remember that on January 3rd, New Year's Eve, is when he boldly, after 62 other countries, banned travel from China. He boldly declared that, travel from China would be shut down, which it never was. We know this because we read the newspapers, and 480,000 people have come in since New Year's Eve. All right. But that was all he was willing to do. And then he finally, in February, said to CDC, all right, go ahead and you do the testing. Just you. I don't want to use the hundreds of labs across the United States. I'm going to enforce roadblocks, okay? And that's exactly what they said about doing to keep the number of tests down so the numbers wouldn't hurt him. So the CDC took its sweet-ass time, and then in early February, they released a test. But the test was flawed. It was broken. It was bad. And by the way, this blaming of the Obama administration, they had bad tests. We didn't have a test for COVID-19 when Obama was president. You understand that? We didn't know anything about COVID-19. We didn't know the strain. We didn't know the RNA. We didn't know the DNA. We didn't know what the molecule would look like. We had no idea about this virus. So there could not have been tests for COVID-19 sitting on a shelf during the Obama administration that were flawed, or that were bad, or that were broken, or that was sad. No, there wasn't. And so they developed at CDC a test. And it was flawed. It didn't work. And it took weeks for them to correct it. Labs across this country were sidelined because he didn't like the numbers. He didn't want the numbers. He didn't want anybody to see. For instance, New York today, New York City, 170,758 confirmed cases. 170,758 confirmed cases in New York. Those are people who are very sick and are showing up at the hospital and are getting tested, is what that is. New Jersey is almost where China was. I mean, New York has surpassed China, right? China had a total of 67,000 cases. New Jersey is looking at 54,588 cases right now. That's almost as much as the entire, country of China. Although we have no idea if we should rely on anything coming out of China. Michigan's got 21,000 cases. Pennsylvania's got 20,000. California's got 20,000. Massachusetts has 18,000. Louisiana has 19,000. Florida has 17,000. And our idiot governor is talking about opening up schools. How can you do that if you don't have testing? How can you do that? These labs wanted so badly to push out tests. Donald Trump did not want them to push out tests. And so commercial and clinical labs were barred from conducting their own tests unless they went through a complex maze. And now that some of you are trying to, apply for unemployment for the first time in your life, you're now dealing with government. I think you could now understand how unbelievably frustrating it was for independent labs, commercial labs, for clinical labs, for public laboratories to apply for their own emergency use authorization from the Food and Drug Administration. All of this squandered so much valuable time. Now, again, when you realize that South Korea got the same warning we did on just about the same day. And the result in South Korea was there was never a need for a shutdown. South Korea never had to shut down its country. And we found out, to be generous, we found out either on the same day or within a day of one another. Within 2 weeks, South Korea was shipping thousands of test kits every single day. And by mid-March, South Korea was testing at a per capita rate 40 times higher than the United States. When we finally cracked 10,000 tests, South Korea was doing that many tests every day. And the result was that South Korea was able to flatten their curve by late March, and they never had a nationwide shutdown. This was all preventable. All of it. All this death. Preventable.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
As coronavirus was silently racing around the world in late January and early February, the federal government not only failed to use the massive arsenal of hundreds of laboratories across the United States for emergency testing, it actually left roadblocks in place to prevent non-government labs from assisting. That is according to documents obtained by CNN and interviews with more than a dozen scientists and physicians involved in coronavirus testing.
At the very beginning of this pandemic, it was the federal government that had the sole ability to do the testing and made it very difficult for private labs, for university labs to make their own tests based on certain regulatory hurdles.
Several hospital and university-based labs have told CNN they saw the pandemic approaching, were developing their own tests as early as January to detect the virus. But the red tape with the FDA's regulatory process prevented them from moving forward, meaning labs sat idle.
Rather than enlisting the tremendous strength and power of the U.S. laboratory capacity, getting everybody working on this and creating tests and having widespread test availability, we had CDC trying to keep running everything by itself.
The federal government was prepared to enforce the rules, sending this memo on February 6 telling state health departments to actively police against labs using their own coronavirus tests. The reasoning behind the tight regulations were good, assure the safety and efficacy of tests. But Dr. Glenn Morris of the University of Florida says the FDA rules were written for normal situations, not a crisis.
When we suddenly hit the point where we were looking at China and seeing what was going on there, what we needed was extremely aggressive leadership. We've got to move fast because otherwise we're going to run into a problem.
The problem developed as soon as the CDC rolled out its own test for verification. It didn't work.
It didn't work. And still, they refuse to let private labs, clinical labs, they refuse to let commercial labs do any of their own creation of tests or dissemination of tests. They just refused. And the reason we all know, is because Donald Trump would not have liked the numbers. And when reporters, CNN especially, they made an inquiry about why there wasn't a call to arms, why the CDC took weeks to fix a flawed test, and in the time that they were wasting there trying to fix their flawed test, why they were telling labs, if you know of any other lab that's putting out any test, we want you to rat them out. We want you to inform so we can shut it down. And when CNN asked the CDC confirmed it didn't seek to bring commercial labs quickly into the testing mix because it decided it was going to use public health laboratories, but it kept commercial laboratories informed of the plan. They made it so hard for any other lab but the CDC, even knowing that the CDC's test was flawed during those critical weeks that it took them to fix the test. They made it so hard for anybody to do a test that they actually encouraged people to rat on each other if they saw another lab doing a test. Now, Seattle, Washington was the first one. February 6th, the Center for Medicare sent out a memo to state health officials and said, you need to notify the agency if you find out about any labs that are working to conduct coronavirus testing. Okay? And when a friend passed a memo along to Dr. Jordan Lasser, a pathologist at Northwell Health in New York, a member of the Clinical Laboratory Improvement Advisory Committee, she said, oh, that definitely gave us pause. No one wants to spend time and money and manpower developing a test that they won't allow you to use. And this shutting down of that avenue severely hampered our ability to test. The problem was that CDC was insisting on being the sole source for the test used in the United States, and they told everyone else, you have to go through us. And that's what now Seattle, at the University of Washington, they have a Seattle flu study, and they had taken thousands of swabs from people who had flu symptoms across the state. But during February, federal and state officials repeatedly rejected their requests to let them test those swabs for corona. That was reported in the New York Times. And then the CDC said to the University of Washington, the Seattle flu study, that they had to go through the FDA to get approval, and that would take months because your project was not certified to share results with the public health officials or anybody outside that university system. And so at the end of February, the scientists at the University of Washington Seattle flu study decided we're not waiting. And they started testing the swabs, and they found coronavirus. And they shared that fact with the FDA, and they shared that with the CDC. And guess what the reaction was? They ordered them to stop. They ordered the University of Washington Seattle flu study to stop testing those swabs that they had already collected for coronavirus. Karen Moe, the director of the university's Institutional Research Board Office, which ensures research meets regulatory and ethical standards, on March 2nd said, every once in a while, the ethics and the regulations don't match up. Ethically, it sure seemed like the right thing to do. At the end of February, on February 29th, finally, the FDA loosened some of its regulations and allowed clinical labs to test using tests that those labs had developed and validated, as long as they told the FDA and submitted these emergency use authorization requests within 15 days. A woman named Julie Canny, the president of the American Clinical Laboratory Association, who was a partner in this plan, said it was the FDA's updated guidance at the end of February that was finally the federal call to action for commercial labs. And it came after weeks of pressure from labs across the country. Here's another little shocking detail for this story. This is our quack guy at the CDC. This is Dr. Redford. Dr. Redford, who's in charge of the CDC, as late as January 28th. Okay? Now remember, New Year's Eve was the China travel ban, and that's all we had done, right? And that was after 62 other countries had instituted a ban. But on January 28th, in an email that CNN got, the CDC director, Robert Redfield, told state public health directors, quote, the virus is not spreading in the U.S. at this time, and CDC believes the immediate health risk from 2019 and COVID, the risk to the general public is low. All the lab directors knew that that was false. And they got on these conference calls with the CDC, and they really begged. They really begged. And it would be another month. Another month.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, so this is Katie Potter. You know her as a very, 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 very smart representative from California. Last night, she had a call with the government. Okay, she had Mike Pence on the call, a whole bunch of people on the call. And if you want to see Katie Potter, you know, she's very famous now for using a whiteboard, which is a really good thing because she can go through each subject, write down, and you can visualize, you know, numbers and people and places and things, and follow her debrief on what happened on that call. It was about a half hour long. That's why I can't play the whole thing, because it was long. And you really need to be patient, but you know, if you're not doing anything, you know, if you're not busy, I would suggest that you look at that 31-minute debrief that Katie Potter offered to the American people last night. It was really super informative. One of the things that Katie Potter found out, because she's using her staff, who are all working remotely, to drill down on numbers, on things, on people, places, things, on what happened, what didn't happen, why it didn't happen. And one of the things that she found out was exactly the thing that we suspected all along. And that was this. You know, the reason why the federal stockpile is empty is because Donald Trump increased exports of things like ventilators, surgical gowns, masks, and other things that would be needed for frontline healthcare workers and Americans who are essential personnel. Masks, gloves, exports of these items during the months of January and February, when he was downplaying all of this, increased by 1,000+%. Yes, exports of these materials, these now essential materials that individuals need, depending on where you live, to even go out in public. You know, we're in this little town called Del Rey here. It's a seaside town. It's a very cool town. I can't afford to live here, but I work here. That's where this Commerce Park is. That's where this office is, okay? I don't live anywhere near here. It's just too damn expensive. The rent is too damn high. But that said, we got an order today from the city, from just the little city, not from the governor, not from the state, not anything uniform, that if we want to go outside, we have to cover. We have to wear a mask. People are scrambling to find masks. They are using everything that I've ever seen under the sun. I see people using bras, which is really fun. I mean, my bra would cover 2 faces. So there I am. I'm very lucky. I never understood why such a little person like me had such great big ones. Now I know. It's to keep me and Jess safe when we go out. But people are using everything known to man. Bandanas, bras. Some people are converting socks. All these things. Because we exported everything. Here's a little thing of Katie Porter. The audio is a little muddy. I apologize. But, you know, people are calling it in, right?
We located public data that shows that during those critical months of January and February, when our country needed to be increasing its supply of masks, of ventilators, of gowns, in fact, our exports went up by over 1,000% of masks during that period, and our imports of things like hand sanitizer and masks and ventilators fell by 11%. And we also looked at the government contracting data. So we all have a lot of questions about where is the supply, where is this equipment? And what we learned is that the government's contracts for this PPE will not arrive until September or October, long after we're hopefully through the worst of this.
Incredible, huh? It's like there's, you know, they talk about herd immunity, as if we were, you know, a pack of bison or something like that, right? No, it's literally thinning out the herd. This is what seems to be occurring. And of course, the more densely populated places are the places where people have contact with each other most frequently. You live in an apartment building, everybody's going to touch that front door. Or you have to buzz yourself in, everybody's going to touch the buzzer. Or you have, you know, a city where people go to bodegas, everybody's going to touch that keypad, right? Everybody's going to make their purchase and they're going to all touch that keypad. And we can't find masks and gloves because this man exported these things plus ventilators, plus surgical gowns, plus N95 masks. Over 1,000% increase in our exports of these items during January and February. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to ask yourself why, because I'm not clear. What I can tell you is last night in New York, we lost over 700 people again. Now, there's this place in New York. I never even knew the name of the island. Apparently, it's called Hart Island. I know where it is. It's off the Bronx, okay? But Hart Island was always referred to by people like me who were lower middle class as Potter's Field. Now, a Potter's Field, I get, is a generic term for a poor people's graveyard. But Potter's Field is a terrifying place to New Yorkers, an absolutely terrifying place, because you can't get there from here, okay? There has never, ever been reporters allowed in Potter's Field. It's an island. You have to take a ferry to get there. And so my mom used to talk about it as being the loneliest place on earth. And she used to tell me that if I didn't, you know, listen and learn, if I didn't, you know, pay attention to the golden rule and do unto others, and if I, you know, use drugs, or if I became a drunk, or if I, you know, became something worse, which back then was like a hua, right? That I would end up being buried in the most lonely, in the loneliest place on earth, okay, in the poor people's gravesite, where all the graves are unmarked. They may scrawl your name on your casket, which would be a, pine box, and they'll scrawl your name on your casket, but then when they bury you in the mass grave, which is what that is, when they bury you there, your grave is unmarked. And this place has been used to bury homeless people, poor people, infected immigrants from other pandemics prior, stillborn babies, believe it or not. I actually, a friend of a friend, I won't even go near like who it was, but their mom had a stillborn, and that stillborn is buried in Potter's Field in an unmarked grave. And so that was a scary, scary, scary freaking place growing up for me. Because we were, lower middle class, a very tenuous, existence. And if I didn't, pull myself up somehow, if I didn't find out something I was good at, if I didn't play by the rules, then I would end up there. She had some weird threats. Totally socially and, politically incorrect threats. Okay, just saying. But that was the day. Anyway, turns out that the city of New York is using Potter's Field right now, and they are burying 24 people a day, 5 days a week. So 100 people in mass graves are being buried in Potter's Field on Hart Island, which you can't get to from here. They're taking the refrigerated trucks, the trailers, and they're putting the trailers on barges and bringing the barges to Hart Island, to Potter's Field, and they're digging mass graves there. Usually they have the city's prisoners dig those graves, but because the prisons have become petri dishes now, they hired contract laborers to bury the dead. And the only way we know this is because of drone video. I think only once in my lifetime reporters were allowed on that island. Oh, by the way, we used to bury our Confederate soldiers there too. Yeah.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Oh, my God. All right, let's just go to the phones. It's Friday. Sean in Connecticut.
Hi, Randi. Love ya.
Love you more.
Yeah. Well, the reason I called was you mentioned something yesterday that intrigued me. It had to do with where all the supplies went. And, it seems like, so instructing, I realized it sounded a lot like the restaurant scene in Goodfellas, where the supplies were in the front door and they went out the back door.
Yeah, when you can't borrow another dime from the bank and you can't buy another case of booze, what do? You light a match. You burn it
exactly.
down.
Unfortunately, we're the ones on fire.
Oh, he's burning it down. There's no question. The man is burning down this country. The next thing to go, everybody is seriously concerned. Jerry Connolly, who is a congressman from Virginia, who sits on the committee that is in charge of the Postal Service, was tweeting last night about how the Postal Service is marked for death. He wants to do it in. He wants the Postal Service to go out of business or to privatize it so that somebody can buy it. And in order to do that, he needs to, A, thin the herd, get the payroll down. He needs to get those. The reason why they wanted those pensions pre-funded is because a $46 billion pension payment was not attractive for a buyer, right? And so for years now, they've been trying to get those pensions pre-funded so that if somebody would swoop in and buy the Postal Service, they wouldn't have to make the first $46 billion payment to shore up those pension funds. Now, he's literally denying the Postal Service the money that they need in the bailout, right? They need money too. Uh-huh. And he's saying, no, absolutely not. He does not want the Postal Service to be funded. Now, that is such a key element of commerce in this country. It's such a big part of our lives for medicine. It's such a big part of our lives for taxes, for, all kinds of things that people need to get by mail. The idea that it would become expensive, okay, to you, I can't even imagine.
Basically, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't need to exist.
Right. But it's more than that. If you can't vote, if there is no mail, you can't vote by mail. See what I mean? Aaron in New Mexico.
Hi, Randy. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. Well, life goes on.
Is your mom okay?
Yeah.
Did you take her home or did you not?
Yeah.
You did?
I took your advice.
Oh, wow. That must be so hard on you.
Remembering that. Thank you for remembering that I took her home, because it's not good out here.
Yeah, so for some people who don't know, Aaron, you are a chronic caller, Aaron, if I could just say that. But we let him do it because he's under so much stress. He's got a mom with Alzheimer's, advanced Alzheimer's, and she was in a nursing home, and he didn't know what to do. To leave her there.
And a girlfriend with cancer, too.
And a girlfriend with cancer, too. And how is she?
She doesn't look very good, but you can't have chemotherapy.
I was just going to say to you, so people who are literally in the middle of chemo or cancer treatments have to stop the cancer treatments?
That's pretty much it.
Oh, my God.
Randy,
oh
that's
my
pretty
God.
much it.
Oh, my God.
And I don't know what to do.
I know. There's no good thing to do except what you're doing. And that's to, just be there for them. That's it. That's all you can do, Aaron. That's it. You're doing exactly all that can be done, which is really, really a testament to you, but what a sick country we have become. That this could happen to a person.
It is. Things I wanted to ask you was this. How come the Dow is going up and the S&P?
Oh, because yesterday the Fed injected $2.3 trillion into big business.
Yeah, but, everything here is on like a shutdown. It's like...
That's just the United States, my friend. You got to realize China is opening, and China is an economic powerhouse, okay? And when China goes back to work, the markets, they're cool with it. They're fine. You got 1 billion people in China to work, to consume. You got 1 billion people in India to work, to consume. What do we got? We got 160 million Americans who work. That's what we have, 160 million work. And, that's because half the population is too old and half the population is too young. So we have 160 million people who, are trying to make a living at any given moment. Well, the idea that 160 million consumers might be sidelined doesn't freak out the market, especially when the United States Federal Reserve Bank is throwing $2.3 trillion of free money at businesses. They're fine with it. They'll go, the consumers will be over there. We're going to be the slave labor. They're going to be the new consumers. So if we're sidelined, no problem. Essential workers who are working for just minimum wage or barely minimum wage, they'll risk their lives because what do you got to lose?
That's right.
Right.
I know. That's what he always says.
And I have said this since the 2008 debacle. Well, actually, since 2007, I knew the economy was crashing. It was very obvious there was a housing market bubble. It was obvious when appraisers came to my house and looked at my house and said it was worth 3 times what I paid for it, which was bullcrap. And I was getting pressure to borrow off my house, and I didn't do it, thank God, because I understood what was going on. And I tried to tell people this is going to explode, and it did. And the unemployment numbers now are badder, bigger, worse than the 2008, 2009 unemployment numbers, which, by the way, took a couple years to get that bad. Okay, they're so horrendous now. And the stock market doesn't care because they've got a whole new bunch of consumers.
No, you're right. They do.
And I said that a long time ago. I said we were changing places.
We own stock. We own Boeing stock. It went from $4.44 to all the way down to $150. It's I don't know what's going to happen. It's
wow. You know, what should happen is everybody, you know, that is managed by these really bad CEOs who didn't plan for any savings during an emergency of any sort. You know, could have been a virus, could have been a war, could have been a million different things, could have been anything at all, right? And they decided to take their profits and do stock buybacks. They need, you want to thin the herd? We need to get rid of those CEOs. We need to get rid of these hedge fund managers. We need to wash them out of the system. They need to go. No money to them. No money to them. Americans will end up owning more of those companies because, you know, you own stock in a company you work for or whatever. They will end up owning those companies, and that will be a good result. But oh no, oh hell no. You know, we've been fed this steady diet of lies that if those companies go under because the CEO is fired or because the board is fired or because the hedge fund that owns it goes broke, you know, the real truth is the employees would end up owning greater shares of those companies, and they would save them.
Yeah, you're right.
It's all a big lie. Everything about our economy is a lie. Everything about it, everything that we make anything here is a lie. Okay, this is why you know, we're all over the place. China has to send ventilators. China has to send gloves. China has to send masks. And everybody out there that's trying to buy them, you know that because you've been on Light in the Box and you've been on Alibaba and you've been on Banggood and you've been on every freaking website and Amazon too. And it's all about buying from China. That's where anything that you need is going to come from.
You know, Randy, I can't even buy gloves out here.
Right.
I can't even buy a mask.
That's right. You can't.
I can't. I mean, I've been through tons of places out here in Santa Fe, and I can't even buy them. I can't even buy toilet paper.
No, I know. Hey, we were all excited today because Brett was able to buy toilet paper today.
I was out in line 7:30 this morning. Wasn't that bad, actually. A half-hour wait. They did a good job of keeping us distant and keeping it moving. It wasn't that bad.
And you know what's crazy, Aaron? We used to sit here and we used to laugh at when our parents would tell a story about rationing or government cheese. And now it's real. Except now it's not cheese and silk stockings. Now it's freaking face masks and gloves to keep us safe from a freaking virus that could have been contained. All we're doing is mitigating. Okay, we're not even close to containment because we don't have tests. If you don't have tests, you don't know who to contain.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Oh, everybody, here's our idiot governor, Ron DeSantis, who won an election by dressing his little baby in a Make America Great onesie. Child abuser. Here he is, wanting to open up schools.
Now, if you look at with schools, I mean, kind of the public health playbook when things happen like this, close schools, cancel mass gatherings, there's just certain things you do. And I think, and I understand that. This particular pandemic is one where I don't think nationwide there's been a single fatality under 25. For whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to threaten kids. And we lose in Florida between 5 and 10 kids a year for the flu. This one, for whatever reason, much more dangerous if you're 65 and plus than the flu, no doubt about that. If you're younger, it just hasn't had an impact. So that should factor into how we're viewing this. I think the data on that has been 100% consistent. I've not seen any deviation on that. Obviously, there's second and third order effects that you have to do in terms of how kids interact or whatnot. But we're going to look at it. I mean, we'll make a decision in due time.
He's an idiot. Okay, here's the real truth. No one in Florida under the age of 25 has died yet from coronavirus. But we've had newborns die of coronavirus. We've had an infant die of coronavirus. There are at least 5 people under the age of 25 who have died from coronavirus. And the idea that school is somehow not a petri dish, everybody knows what happens when you have a little, a toddler who then becomes school-aged and starts venturing out into either pre-K or nursery school, whatever you're going to call it, kinder care, and then, or maybe they just go right into kindergarten and first grade. All of a sudden, the whole house is sick. The whole house is sick because the kids bring whatever it is that's going around home. And that kid could be coming home to grandma. That kid could be coming home to Aunt Randy. That kid could be coming home to Uncle Jimmy or Uncle Howard or, this is just they're so ridiculous. They just want to rush to open, and get people back to work because JP Morgan's numbers are terrifying. JP Morgan has looked at the situation we have found ourselves in through no fault of our own, but through complete 100% liability and neglect by this administration, the CDC, the failure at the testing, the failure to acknowledge that this was going to be a problem, the failure to contain it. Now all we can do, like I said, words matter. Containment means identifying who has it and tracing any connection or any contact that they have had, and then quarantining those people for 14 days as well. That would be containing the spread of this virus. We've never done that. We're not doing it now. We're not in containment mode. That's what South Korea did. It's what China did. It's what other places did that have a whole lot less death and spread. What we're doing is called mitigation. That means taking a bad situation and making it slightly tolerable. Mitigating factors doesn't mean the crime hasn't been committed. It means, maybe you meant to do the right thing, but you did the wrong thing. And that's where we are. We're mitigating. We're trying to mitigate a bad, horrible, neglectful, criminal situation. We're not in containment. We never were. We're in mitigation. And Idiot Boy is sitting here saying, let's open the schools. Let's do it. And Donald Trump is sitting there saying, I'm putting together an economic task force. And they're looking at, what's going to happen here. And instead of giving people money, instead of giving families money, you got to jump through so many freaking hoops. I mean, people, I will say, I heard a rumor, I hope it's true, for California, that your unemployment checks, your $600 checks, should start flowing. I heard Sunday, but Sunday the banks are closed, so I'm not clear. But soon. Other people like Florida, we're lining up outside. I'm not, because I'm not unemployed. But they're lining up outside, not social distancing at all, trying to get paper applications. And Idiot Boy was asked about that too. And, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen.
Yesterday we saw these very long lines in Hialeah. People.
Yeah, so we don't want the line. I mean, so social distancing is important. Some people don't have access online. Obviously, the website was having problems. We put a lot of servers in. Sunday, I think they did 62,000. Then it started to go a little slower yesterday. So they're working on that, and they're.
Look at him. He's sitting there with one freaking glove on. What is that about? One glove. Say, no, we don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want people lining up in Hialeah. We don't want. But that is what he did. That is what happened. Here it is. No one here on this video is social distancing. Look at this. Everybody's on top of everybody. Okay, and that is a very Hispanic community, Hialeah, and they're all lined up, one on top of listen, the way that we're so mismanaged here is it's like I'm looking at the next hot spots, and just in case you don't know them, the next hot spot, New York City is spiking. Okay, spiking in death, really, and they're telling us Sunday. Remember, we started this week with. Jerome Adams, he's our Surgeon General, telling us that this was going to be our 9/11. Remember, this was going to be, our Pearl Harbor week. This was going to be the saddest week for everybody, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, that means New York is peaking this weekend, okay? They had they're going to... So far, you know, like last night, I think they lost over 700 people. The night before, they lost 779 people. And like I said, there are barges of dead bodies because they can't even keep them. So what's going on is a lot of the bodies are temporarily going to be interned, meaning buried in mass graves in Potter's Field in New York. And that's why they're scrawling the name of the person on the pine box, so that if they have to dig them out for a hearse to come and get them, I don't know how the hearse is going to get there. Maybe they'll ferry it back to have a proper burial. I mean, these are the stories we heard in Italy. Okay, we heard these same stories that people were dying alone and that people were being buried without their families being able to attend. It's not just poor people. It's a lot of people. It's a lot. Anyway, it looks like the next hot spots are going to be Detroit. 35% poverty rate there, 3 times the national average. What could go wrong? Large homeless population in Detroit. Michigan has 21,000 confirmed coronavirus cases as of today. Detroit has 6,000 cases and about 272 deaths. Now, remember, the deaths, oh, this is so sad. The deaths lag behind the diagnosis. About 14 days between showing up at the hospital and then finally coding or having the ventilator shut off, right? So you got that. Gretchen Whitmer is trying her very, very best, but you know, her stuff's being taken by FEMA. Crazy. At this time, the trajectory of Detroit is unfortunately even more steep than that of New York. Dr. Tina Chopra, the medical director of infection prevention and hospital epidemiology at the Detroit Medical Center, was quoted as saying by the Associated Press. Chicago is also up there. Illinois, you've got 16,000 cases as of today. 11,000 are in Chicago. You've got 9.5 million people living in your metro. And the U.S. National Guard and Army Corps of Engineers are working to set up McCormick Place, as you know. Your governor, J.B. Pritzker, is also saying his stuff's being commandeered, taken away from him. He said, we will peak sometime in April. New Orleans, of course, Louisiana, you got 18,000. The coronavirus cases are growing in Louisiana faster per capita than any other state. Orleans Parish has 5,000 cases. That's New Orleans. That's as of today. And then South Florida. South Florida's right up there, next hot spot.
Things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, so I'm telling you about the next hotspots, and while I tell you about that, if you're watching on YouTube or wherever you watch this, on RandyRhodes.com or wherever, I'm going to show you this drone video. There's no audio on it because it's drone video of the mass graves being created in New York, and how they're handling these boxes, because frankly, you know, I've said this before, I know a lot of people have you know, very specific plans about their funerals. Some people don't want one, other people want to be cremated, they want their ashes, you know, sprinkled around something that they love or whatever. Other people want the whole thing. Some people want to lay in the rotunda, they want to be, you know, lie and stay. This is how you are buried if you're a COVID mortality. I don't even know how to say, if you've died from COVID and your family's under quarantine and can't claim your body. This is where you'll go. And in my whole life, I've never envisioned my funeral including a forklift, a barge, a trailer, a tractor trailer, or see that building right there? See, that used to be a mental institution, and before that, they tried it out as, it was built to house Confederate soldiers that the North captured. So that's for you guys in the Confederacy. That's where you would go. But now it's a mass grave, is what it is. I mean, this is just chilling crap. This is just amazing. Look, here comes the forklift. Here you go. New shipment of dead. Bring out your dead, everybody. Bring out your dead. It's just... All right, so we know the next places are going to be Detroit. It's going to be Chicago. It's going to be New Orleans. It's going to be South Florida. Our governor, our idiot boy governor, he wants to open schools. We have 16,000 cases here. He wants to open schools. You know, we get a notice every once in a while that new tests have come in and that they're available for very sick people. And here, it's probably the same where you are. Here, what you have to do is you have to call, and then they'll teledoc with you, and then they have to make sure that you're good and sick. You know, you got like a nice fever going, you can't breathe, you look like crap. You know, you're having you know, the sweats or whatever, and you got it, right? And then you can make an appointment for a few days later to drive down to a place here, okay? And then they will test you, but you'll have to wait at least 3, maybe 5, maybe 6 days to get your result. Well, I mean, that's a great plan, isn't it? Way to go, DeSantis. Let's open the schools with that being the only... And I just got a notice, you know, that from our county saying... Okay, guess what, everybody? We got 2,000 more tests. 2,000 more tests, but only if you're really sick. Then you could call. Then we can evaluate you. Then we can make an appointment for you. And then you can come in. And then you could wait for your test result. Let's open the schools. Washington, D.C., relatively small. Population there is about 711,000. There's 1,500 confirmed cases as of today. The total combined number for D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, which is, you know, much more than a tri-state area. I mean, a lot of people work in D.C. live in Virginia. A lot of people work in D.C. live in, you know, Maryland. I used to live in D.C., but I worked in Rockville. I worked in Maryland when I was, you know, at Clear Channel, the Dark Star. That's when I lived in D.C. I used to drive to Rockville because they have a Clear Channel cluster, which sounds like, you know, COVID. And it was about as enjoyable. But, yeah, so 11,750 for D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, 280 dead. And Dr. Debbie Birx today, she said she's a little concerned about Philadelphia, concerned about Philly. Philly's got 5,000 cases. Pennsylvania has 18,000. 340 dead. Colorado, 33,277 deaths are predicted by June 1st in the worst case, 379 in the best case. There were 6,000 cases today in Colorado. 1,000 of those are in Denver. That's not so bad when you consider New York has 170,000 and 758 cases. Worldwide, there are 1.6 million, headed to 2 million cases. And New York is so inundated with dead that it's literally 1350 there. Let's bring out your dead time. Instead of an ox cart, we use a tractor trailer. That's what we do. And then we put it on a barge. Never imagined a barge in my funeral. Craig in Oregon.
Hello, Randy. Thank you so much. I feel so honored that you picked me.
Yes, I picked
you. So I want to just quickly say that, you know, I don't think that we can think about this coronavirus as just a terrible thing that has impacted this country, but also think of it from the perspective of terrible people using this as an opportunity to create their terrible vision of the world. And so I'm going to quote Lee Atwater, who said some terrible things, and he uses the N-bomb, which I'm going to avoid here, just to frame my perspective here. He says, quote, you start out in 1954 saying NNN. By 1968, you can't say N. That hurts you. It backfires. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract. Now you're talking about cutting taxes and all these things. You're talking about a totally economic thing, and as a byproduct of them, blacks get hurt worse than white. We want to cut this. It's much more abstract than the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than end quote. The idea that we can just look at Katrina as a catastrophe is not okay. The idea that we can look at Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico as just a catastrophe and say, that's okay, it's not. Same thing here. People with terrible means and terrible visions of the world will use these terrible tragedies to manipulate the population in ways that they want. And I have a feeling that Donald Trump might be a white supremacist.
Oh, you
now,
do.
where I might get that idea from?
Yeah, where?
Yeah. So my wife.
I know. I will tell you. You know, it's on everybody's mind who is aware and awake about the institutionalized manner in which we punish people of color in this country. I mean, you know, there's a reason why. Let's go back to an abstract one. Vietnam.
Can I add a sense of fear into your already terrible?
Oh God, no.
My wife is
no.
Okay.
No. 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 It's no. Okay? You're all right with the no?
All right.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
You're boss lady.
Yeah.
You're in charge.
Okay, thanks. It's ugly enough.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
And just as a society, just forget about shaking hands. We don't need to shake hands. We've got to break that custom. Because as a matter of fact, that is really one of the major ways that you can transmit a respiratory-borne illness.
Holy crap. That's all I got to say about that. Okay, everybody? All right, Joe in New York.
Hi, Randy.
Hey.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. Where are you?
I just want to remind...
Where are you in the 5 boroughs?
No, I'm in, Long Island. I'm in Long Island.
Oh, that's not good either.
No, we just had a couple of relatives came down with it also, and one died. She was 32 years old.
Oh no!
But anyway, yeah, it's very sad, and we can't even see him. Obama inherited the economy that was on free fall. All right, all Trump had to do was just coast. Just coast. It would have been better. I could imagine how good it would have been if Hillary was here. And the other thing is, he dismantled everything. He dismantled the epidemic unit. He just dismantled the CDC epidemic control teams, which were in 39 countries, right, which included China. He brought them all back.
You know what the name of that was? It was called Predict.
Predict. And he sold 17 tons.
Yeah, he sure did. Our exports of things that are now crucial to our survival went up by 1,065%. Okay, and our imports of those things went down by 11%. I mean, this man is supposed to be the greatest businessman ever. Well, I don't know what his business is, but if his business is like being angel of death, then he's good at that.
He just bankrupted the American country. He just bankrupted us. And if this was Obama, he'd be calling Obama a murderer.
Oh, definitely. Oh, my God. Can you imagine? I mean, Obama was pro bringing health care and did bring health care to about 20 million Americans, and they put his face on a poster with a bone through his nose and called him a witch doctor and accused him of killing grandma. What the?
Yeah. Randy, if I may, yesterday you were talking about the mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
And I'm in the union. I'm in the Teamster union. Back in the 70s, we had to rent out a voting machine and get down to it. Well, we stopped that 30 years ago. All right? We do mail-in ballots. Not one complaint. just mail-in ballots. You have all checkers over there, make sure everything's going right. You hire a company to do all the mailing and get all the stuff back. That envelope that you get is 3 envelopes in there, all right? The first one is mailed to you. The second one you just sign. The third one you put the ballot inside that, and then inside the second ballot, the second envelope. We never had a complaint over that.
And
no one ever was accused of cheating, nothing.
You're right. I mean, look, Utah votes by mail. Washington State votes by mail. Hawaii is going to have their first vote by mail, all vote by mail election this year. Colorado votes by mail. Oregon votes by mail. And other states have no excuse absentee voting, meaning you don't have to tell them why you want to vote on a piece of paper and send it in yourself. You don't have to tell them. 22 states do that. This man is terrified that a large turnout via getting your ballot in the mail because you're a registered voter will prevent him from becoming the next president of the United States. That is what his big fear is. And there's another reason too, because there's never really one evil reason. The other reason is he wants to destroy the post office because think of the real estate the post office has. Think about that.
Oh, a lot of money.
Oh my God, billions of dollars in real estate. Okay, and so that's kind of been on the back burner for a really long time, since about the Bush administration. Since 2006, they've been saying, all right, here's what we're going to do to hobble the post office. We're going to make you pre-fund the pensions of people who haven't even been born yet, who may go work for the post office someday. And we want you to make a deposit of like $50 billion, $46 billion into that pension fund. No other entity, no other company, no other union, no other nothing ever had to pre-fund a pension like that. The reason they did it to the post office is because they've been dying to make it attractive for privatization, to make it attractive for, a hedge fund to buy it. And if you had $46 billion in prepaid pensions, well, who wouldn't want to buy that?
Well, you know what Reagan did to them, too? He took away their Social Security.
What do you mean?
Well, what happened was back then when Reagan was in there, he wouldn't allow them to double dip. So they couldn't get a pension
and
or Social Security.
Right.
Right. So a lot of them don't have Social Security or medical. They were getting it under Obama.
That's unbelievable. They have been after this post office forever. And now that there is a need to vote by mail, and now that there are 27 states that allow or prefer people to vote by mail, he's freaking out. And he wants to destroy it. Period. Now, there will be people who say, oh, but the Postal Service is enumerated in the Constitution. It is mentioned in Article 1, Section 8. But all it says is that that Congress should establish post offices and post roads. That's all it says. It doesn't say anything about, mail delivered by airplane. Do you know what I mean? Which is how we get it across the country and to other countries. And so there's an opportunity for the Supreme Court to literally weigh in and say, you don't need to have a post office. You can dissolve it.
No.
And I'm telling you, they asked for $89 billion, saying they're going to run out of cash by the end of September because of the COVID thing. Because there are, it's like one of my callers said a couple weeks ago, I think. She had noticed this very low volume of, the big postcards that you get and the real estate postcards that you get and, the Bed Bath & Beyond 20% off online only. She said she noticed her mailbox was kind of free of this sort of, stuff. Well, that's costing the post office because that's what the post office contracts with businesses to do, and that's how they make money.
Well, all these big corporations are going to make billions off of them goals and now, but I wonder what a stamp's going to cost.
Well, that's the whole thing, isn't it? I mean, if we're left with nothing but, I don't know, Amazon and those Sprinter trucks for our deliveries, or if we're, somehow having to use UPS or FedEx or something, what is it going to cost to send a postcard or a letter or a package? I mean, right now I could tell you
47 cents right now.
Right, well, it's 49 cents.
49.
It's 49 cents. And if I have to send a T-shirt to you or whatever, it's $6. It's $6. But, you know, I use the Postal Service. They do tracking. People like it. They get tracking information. It's worth it. And I know that, you know, my carrier is, you know, going to have a job. I love the Postal Service. You know, when I moved to Costa Rica, I told you one of the reasons why I cried and had to come back, they don't have mail. No mail. No addresses. No mail. No online shopping.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Oh, everybody, here's Dr. Redfield, the quack that heads the CDC.
Can I just ask Dr. Redfield, because I hear that quite a bit, and I'm a physician, and people ask me, and I frankly, I don't know, because there isn't data, and I would typically say, no, I want data. You're a doctor. It's a decision between doctor and patient. Would you recommend it to a patient?
Hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, I'm not going to recommend it and not going to not recommend it.
Great.
I think, you know, Sandra, you and I are very similar. We're probably similar to my friend, Dr. Fauci. I mean, you know, we're very comfortable in responding when we have data that is compelling, and I think this is where the studies are going to give it. CDC is an organization, as you know, you and I have talked about it before. We're not an opinion organization.
Yeah.
We're a science-based, data-driven organization. So I do think this is going to be an independent decision of these healthcare providers and patients, that at this stage and at this moment in time, we're not recommending it, but we're not recommending it. We're recommending for the physician and the patient to have that discussion.
It's so sad. It's so sad. By the way, this is why I call him a quack. He literally said on January 28th, which was my birthday, okay? He literally sent an email as the director of the CDC telling the public state health directors, quote, "The virus is not spreading in the U.S. at this time, and CDC believes the immediate health risk from COVID to the general American public is low." We have almost 500,000 cases in the United States. Almost 500,000 cases in the United States. But Laura Ingraham wasn't going to criticize him until he was well, he wasn't anti. He was take it, don't take it. I mean, now I will say this, okay? As somebody who has had the cancer, okay, I will tell you, if you talk to 3 doctors, you can get 3 different answers. And basically, healthcare decisions are almost always yours. You're going to get like whether or not to do this or whether or not to do that. Well, I would do it. No, I wouldn't do it. Well, I would, get surgery. Oh, I would do physical therapy. Oh, I would do the chemo. Oh, I would just take letrozole for the next 5 years. Oh, I would just screen very aggressively for the next, every 6 months, have a mammo and you'll catch whatever it is. Or, you're going to get all these different answers. But when we're in the middle of a pandemic and you have the president hawking a drug, okay, seriously, you kind of want the CDC to say, there's no data. You don't want the CDC to be saying on January 28th, when we absolutely positively knew there was a pandemic that was about to just grab us by the throats here, well, it's a very low risk, and we don't need to mitigate. We don't need to do anything. And then turn around and tell laboratories, only the CDC is going to do the test. You can't do it. Now they talk about the large volume of Americans. We got 325 million people. We can't test everybody. First of all, let's narrow that down. You only have 160 million working-aged people. So if you wanted to open the economy, guess who has to be tested? Right. And if you want to have a cure, guess who has to be tested? Right. People who have had it. Why? Because they probably have some antibodies that might save some other lives. But we got this guy being asked about a pill that you can't take if you have high blood pressure, that you can't take if you have any kidney issues like diabetes, that you can't take if you are taking digitalis of any sort, like digoxin or one of these, for congestive heart failure medications. Can't take it because you'll become toxic and die. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. Because the president likes it. And Laura Ingraham likes it.
Now, this just happened. The CDC director, the agency that kind of screwed up testing for about 6 weeks in the United States.
Yeah.
He was on CNN tonight essentially dismissing, trashing, a backhanded slap at hydroxychloroquine, despite all of its success stories. Unbelievable. Now, if it was actually a government agency, a real agency, really, he probably would be fired for that.
Oh, my God. So now, in order to make her argument for this crazy, malaria drug, she now exposes the truth that Redfield prevented public labs, clinical labs, university laboratories, flu pandemic specialists who had already swabbed people for the flu, that he was the guy who prevented the testing, and that his test was broken, and it took weeks to fix his test, and we lost all those weeks, and this freaking thing spread. But here's the thing. If this is a miracle drug, if it's an absolute miracle, why do we have 18,000 dead people in this country from this virus? If it works, so why do we have 18,000 dead people? Should have no dead people. Jim in Minnesota. Jim in Minnesota.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I was just going to comment about that herd immunity.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that really makes sense. It's you look at the people that are perishing because of it, and I think they had a lot of time. They knew this for a long time, and they're not doing nothing about it. They're still not doing nothing about it. And that's, to me,
everything that's being done, you are doing. I am doing. Brett is doing. Your family is doing. Every sacrifice that's being made is being made by us.
Right.
They're not doing anything. I will tell you that for people who have had it, it would be important to have in the drugstore. You know how like they have Cologuard commercials on TV where you could poop and send it in a box? Poop in a box, right?
Yep.
Why don't we have, like we have pregnancy tests in the store, why don't we have serology tests in the store where I could prick my little finger, I could, put it into the test, I could see if it comes up, like with an M, right? And that means I have an antibody that is effective against this virus. And then I go give blood so that I can save your life or you can save mine. Why can't we do that? Why do we have to wait for it to trickle out and trickle down to Detroit and New York and New Orleans, herd immunity? Why can't we create herd immunity?
I think when it starts getting to the red states, something will happen quicker.
Well,
that's just my opinion on it.
Well, last time I checked, this man needs Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and these are the next hot spots. So I have no idea why he made these people vote in a pandemic. I really don't know what there was to gain. I'm not really sure what the plan is, but I can promise you it has everything to do with November. It has everything to do with it.
Yeah, like you were talking about the post office thing, it definitely does. He's going to prison, and I hope that albino goes with him.
Oh,
and Mitch
Jim,
McMurdo,
from your mouth to God's ears on this Holy Friday, please, dear God, hear Jim's prayer.
That would, that would change my whole opinion about the good Lord and everything. But it's just
mine too.
It's something that has to happen because it's
unbelievable. It's unconscionable.
Murders,
it is.
Yeah.
It's negligent homicide on a grand scale. I mean, it's cult-like. It really is. I alone can fix it. Remember that? That's when we knew we were in trouble. Michael in Ohio, you'll probably have the last word, so make it good.
I'm wondering why people are standing out protesting at the State House, wanting to go back to work here in Ohio. DeWine shut down everything really fast. It's I don't know what to say to these people. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone.
Which ones? I don't know who you're talking about.
People that are protesting are saying that they're taking our rights away from us to go back to work.
Oh my God! Really? You have protests in Ohio to open the economy?
That's what they're out there protesting.
Why don't they protest for tests?
I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. By the way, Randy, I love you. Thank you for your show. I listen every day.
I'm very grateful.
Much as I can.
I'm very, very grateful. Thank you very much.
And we love you, Ohio, and you take care, okay? And good, and bless your mom.
Thank you, Buckeye.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So Easter Sunday, remote in if you must, if you may, if you want, to whatever, church makes you feel, or not. And just know, peak death, supposed to be Easter Sunday. Now, we had Passover, we had Good Friday, which is okay, and now we have Easter. Fingers crossed.